Sarah's hands trembled as she read the text message for the third time. Her date was confirmed for 7 p.m. at Marino's, one of the nicest restaurants downtown. She should have been excited. Instead, panic clawed at her chest as she looked at her 6-year-old son, Tommy, who sat on their worn apartment couch, his Spider-Man action figure clutched in his small hands. The babysitter had canceled. Again. It was the third time this month, and Sarah couldn't afford to keep paying cancellation fees to sitters who never showed up. She glanced at her phone, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. She could cancel the date. Mark seemed nice from their conversations, but he was a CEO of some tech company, successful, polished, probably used to women who had their lives together. Women who didn't show up to first dates with their children in tow. But something in Sarah's chest refused to give up. She'd been alone for 4 years, ever since Tommy's father walked out when he was just 2. 4 years of double shifts at the diner, of choosing between fixing the car or buying Tommy new shoes, of falling into bed exhausted every night and wondering if she'd ever feel like more than just a tired single mom barely keeping her head above water. This date was supposed to be different. Her friend Lisa had set them up, insisting that Mark was one of the good ones. Sarah typed the message before she could overthink it. "I'm so sorry, but my sitter canceled last minute. I have to bring my son. Is that okay? I completely understand if you want to reschedule." She hit send and immediately felt sick. There, she'd done it. Now he'd politely decline, and she could spend another Saturday night helping Tommy build Lego sets and pretending she wasn't lonely. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. "Of course. I love kids. See you both at 7. Sarah stared at the message, reading it twice to make sure she wasn't imagining things. Her eyes welled up with tears. She quickly blinked away. "Tommy, baby," she called out, her voice catching. "How would you like to go to a fancy restaurant tonight?" At Marino's, Sarah felt completely out of place. Her best dress was 5 years old, and Tommy's button-up shirt had a small stain near the collar she'd tried desperately to hide. She spotted Mark immediately, tall, confident, in an expensive suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. This was a mistake. She should leave. But then Mark smiled, and something in his expression made her feet keep moving forward. He stood up as they approached, and instead of shaking Sarah's hand, he knelt down to Tommy's level. "You must be Tommy," Mark said warmly. "I'm Mark. That's a pretty cool Spider-Man you've got there." Tommy, usually shy around strangers, lit up. "You know Spider-Man?" "Know him. He's my favorite superhero. Though I have to say, I always thought he needed a better sidekick." "What do you think?" As Tommy launched into an animated discussion about superhero sidekicks, Sarah felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. Mark pulled out a chair for her, then one for Tommy, treating her son with the same respect and attention he gave her. When the waiter came, Mark asked Tommy what he liked to eat and then personally recommended the chicken tenders, adding in a stage whisper, "They're secretly the best thing on the menu, but don't tell anyone." Throughout dinner, Mark didn't just tolerate Tommy's presence, he engaged with him, asked him questions about school and his favorite games, and even requested crayons so Tommy could draw on the paper tablecloth. But he also made sure to include Sarah in the conversation, asking about her work, her dreams, and actually listening to her answers like they mattered. "I manage the evening shift at Rosie's Diner on 5th Street, Sarah said, bracing herself for the usual polite nod that meant people were already mentally checking out of the conversation. Instead, Mark's eyes widened. "Rosie's. I used to go there as a kid with my mom. Is the peach pie still as good as I remember?" "You know Rosie's?" Sarah asked, surprised. Mark's expression softened. "My mom was a single parent too. We didn't have much. That diner was where she'd take me on special occasions, birthdays, good report cards, stuff like that. I remember thinking it was the fanciest place in the world." He smiled at Tommy. "Your mom works really hard at an important job. Do you help her out at home?" Tommy nodded seriously. "I do the dishes. Well, the plastic ones. And I'm learning to make my bed." "That's impressive. I didn't learn to make my bed until I was 10. As dessert arrived, a chocolate lava cake with 3 spoons, Tommy yawned. Without missing a beat, Mark suggested they skip the coffee and offered to walk them to their car. But when they got outside, Sarah's old Honda wouldn't start. The engine clicked weakly, then nothing. "No, no, no," Sarah muttered, turning the key again. This car was supposed to last another year. She couldn't afford repairs right now. The tears she'd been holding back all evening threatened to spill over. Pop the hood, Mark said gently. You don't have to. I want to. Mark examined the engine, his expensive suit jacket discarded on the passenger seat. Battery's dead. Let me call you a car service. I can't afford, Sarah started, her voice breaking. My treat. Please. Mark's eyes were kind, not pitying. Let me help. As they waited for the car, Tommy leaned against Sarah's legs, half asleep. Mark made a phone call, speaking quietly. When he hung up, he knelt down to Tommy again. Hey, buddy, I need to tell you something important. Your mom is doing an amazing job raising you. You know that, right? Tommy nodded sleepily. Good. Don't ever forget it. Mark stood and turned to Sarah. I made another call. My company has a partnership with Henderson Auto, they're the best mechanics in the city. They'll tow your car tonight and fix whatever's wrong. No charge. Mark, I can't accept. Yes, you can. Consider it a favor between friends. He paused. If you'd like to be friends, that is. Or maybe more than friends. Because I'd really like to see you again, Sarah. Both of you. Tears finally spilled down Sarah's cheeks. Why are you being so kind? Mark's expression grew distant for a moment. Because I remember what it was like watching my mom struggle. I remember the people who helped us and the people who looked down on us. I promised myself that if I ever had the means, I'd be the person who helps. He smiled. Besides, I haven't had this much fun on a date in years. Tommy's superhero ranking system is very sophisticated. The car service arrived, and as they prepared to leave, Mark handed Tommy a business card. This has my personal number. If you or your mom ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call me, okay? 3 months later, Sarah stood in Mark's kitchen, their kitchen. She was still getting used to thinking of it that way, watching him teach Tommy how to make pancakes. The job Mark had helped her get at his company's hospitality division had tripled her salary. Her car was running smoothly. Tommy was enrolled in a better school district. But more than any of that, she had found something she thought she'd lost forever: hope. And love. The kind of love that showed up not in grand gestures but in small moments, in a man who chose to see her son not as an inconvenience but as a blessing, who saw her struggles not as flaws but as evidence of her strength. Mom, Tommy called out. Mark says he wants to ask you something important. Sarah's heart skipped as Mark turned, flower on his cheek, and smiled at her with such tenderness that she felt tears prick her eyes for the 1000th time since that first date. Later, Mark said softly, his eyes promising everything. Right now, we have pancakes to make. Sometimes, Sarah thought, the unthinkable wasn't a tragedy. Sometimes it was grace arriving exactly when you needed it most, disguised as a CEO who knew that the truest measure of success wasn't what you achieved, but who you chose to lift up along the way.